When you hear the name Linda Blair, something immediately sparks in memory. It is not just recognition, it is a feeling, almost like stepping into a moment frozen in cinematic history, where one performance changed everything. For millions of people around the world, that moment came with her unforgettable role as Regan McNeil in The Exorcist, a film that didn't simply scare audiences, but reshaped horror forever. She was astonishingly young when she stepped into a role so emotionally demanding and deeply unsettling that it instantly made her a global sensation. Not just famous, but the kind of famous where her face became impossible to forget, where conversations about cinema somehow always circled back to that haunting performance. Critics praised her with disbelief. Audiences sat frozen in shock, and decades later her work is still discussed as one of the boldest performances ever delivered by a young actor. Yet what makes Linda Blair's story truly remarkable is that it never stayed trapped inside that one defining chapter. While many performers spend years chasing the shadow of their biggest success, she quietly chose a different path. She embraced challenges, explored new films, appeared on television, and experimented with projects that allowed her to grow instead of simply repeating the past. Some roles reached wider audiences than others, but what mattered was her willingness to keep evolving, to remain committed to her craft despite the pressures that often overwhelm young stars. Over time, fans stopped seeing only the frightened child from one legendary horror film and began seeing someone stronger, someone authentic, someone who had survived an industry famous for breaking spirits and losing people in the noise of expectation. But perhaps the most meaningful chapter of her life happened far away from flashing cameras and red carpets. Through the Linda Blair World Heart Foundation, she dedicated herself to rescuing and rehabilitating neglected and abandoned animals, pouring years of energy into giving vulnerable lives a second chance. What makes this work stand out is how sincere it feels, never performative, never designed for applause, simply driven by compassion and persistence. That quiet commitment earned admiration of a different kind, one rooted not in celebrity, but in respect. Linda Blair's journey becomes something larger than fame itself. It becomes a reminder that a powerful beginning does not have to define an entire life, that resilience matters just as much as talent, and that sometimes the most inspiring legacy is built not under bright lights, but in the kindness and purpose someone chooses when the spotlight fades.